Hey, this is SeerNova Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3. We have Jason Lenox with us. So what's going on?
Well, Greg, I'm doing good. It's been a while since I've been on the SeerNova channels. I could go through my records. It might have been a hot minute, but it's good to be back. And I appreciate you having me as a guest. And I always appreciate you're always out working, man. I always see you out doing stuff, promoting books. I appreciate it. So what am I up to right now? Just kind of getting out and working to promote my latest comic book, Lords of the Cosmos 5, which is live on Kickstarter for like the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I saw that. Like you already have like almost $6,000 and you got like 20 days to go.
Yeah, so we'll see how high we can take it. It's been a while since my last comic book was on Kickstarter back in 2021, and it's definitely a different environment in crowdfunding.
Yeah, what can we talk about? We did change our podcast a little from what we used to do. So we have like a center, like a specific topic instead of just going all over the place and talking about those Kickstarters and stuff. I kind of took it from Timothy Fling. His show is pretty cool, so I was just like,
yes, it's very, very formatted with Tim, and I like that.
Yeah, so I told Dylan, I was like, yeah, we're gonna do that instead. So the topic today is actually these toys because your Kickstarter is kind of, it's like relevant to it.
Yeah.
So what are like some memorable like 80s toys? Like what made them like?
Well, I lived through it, and I think I had an infatuation with most of the main ones. So I remember really being into Masters of the Universe when that was a thing, and then in kind of like short succession, G.I. Joe was a thing for me, Transformers was a thing for me, and those were the more popular ones. Oddly enough, another one that I really, really remember and I tried to collect as a kid was Robotech, the cartoon show, right? Syndicated anime show. Matchbox had toys for that series. So I was into that. It's very interesting because some people that I see are really into like one toy. And then I follow a couple Facebook groups that are like really, really into like toy modeling. So like I follow a G.I. Joe toy group where these are people that are putting real adult time and money into the toys and then dioramas and then some custom builds with them. I don't think I ever got that into any toy. I think I was probably pretty stereotypical where like I would find a toy and I was into it and then I moved on to something else. So like I remember, being in the Star Wars toys in the early 80s. It was like, Star Wars, and then it was like I got tired of it, and then it was like Masters of the Universe, and I got tired of it. And then Transformers, G.I. Joe, etc. And like I said, Robotech. And there were some other, I think, probably odd toys that were mixed in there. But those are the ones that I really remember the most. And I had fun with them, but I never was that over the top where it was like, I've only liked Masters of the Universe my entire childhood. But I think a lot of kids were like that because at that time, it was just like a sugar rush between the cartoons and the toys and the marketing. And the stuff just got pushed at you where it was like, it's a thing. And then it kind of fell off. And I watched a series on Netflix about toys, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it was pretty popular.
The toys that made us.
Yes. And one of the things that stuck out to me with Masters of the Universe was like the sales were going like up, 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 up. And then at some point it was like hundreds of millions of dollars, and then it just stopped.
Okay.
And sales went off a cliff. And probably because a lot of kids were like me that they were into it, and then it just lost our interest. Right. And oddly enough, thanks to social media now, I'm able to learn more about these toys. So one of the weird things with Masters of the Universe that I found out recently was there was a play set for Eternia that came out in the late 80s that was like, must have been greenlit when it was at their peak, and then came out like after it fell off a cliff. And I had no recollection of this toy at all, but it existed. But it existed after the spotlight was they didn't get it out fast enough. And that's my recollection from 80s toys, is that they were quick burners. You know what I mean? Like they were really popular, and then we in that generation of 80s kids, I think we just kind of moved on really quick. I love the hardcore fans that exist today there was a guy that I saw on Facebook that built a scale Snake Mountain, and there was a Snake Mountain playset, but this dude built like a big Snake Mountain that looked just like the cartoon, and it had like LED lights and like the lava and all this stuff, and it was like, holy smokes, it must have been like 5 feet tall. So I do have kind of a retro fandom for seeing what those super fans are doing now, because to me that is like that those are the fans, and I love seeing them take this stuff to like the next level with carpentry, crafting, etc. skills. And it's really wild, man. Some of the Masters of the Universe, GI Joe, and what they're doing. There were shows that I liked. I really liked Thundercats, and I really liked the second show from those people. I think it was Ruby Spears that did it, Silverhawks. I never got into the toys for either. I always like Silverhawks more than Thundercats, but Silverhawks, it's weird because I see Silverhawks toys now in auctions, and I don't even remember being able to buy them as a kid. So again, they must not have done really well. I remember Power Lords, which was a really weird toy where like the front and the back was like a different character. So like you'd flip the head around, there was like a face in the back of the head. And I remember a kid named Todd when I was in like first or second grade that had those, and I was so jealous. And again, your parents were only going to spend so much money on this stuff as a kid in the 80s. So I remember them. I had Robotech toys, Robotech. I had Robotics and Robotech. Robotics was kind of like a modular building set, and of course there was a cartoon for Robotics that was like on this it was Robotics, Bigfoot, and another series of toys that were like underground monsters, and I'd have to look up what they were. But yeah, there's kind of my personal toy take in a minute.
I'm more of like these kids. Well, I am a 90s kid. I'm not more of them. So like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. So not really
Turtles. I was aware of Turtles, but I wasn't the target demographic, so I was aware of it. The Turtles toys seemed very childish to me, and I never had any interest in them. But again, I was probably 15, 16 when those were like hitting their peak. They were my recollection was they were just very childish.
Yeah. And like it was mostly video games that was catching my eye and not toys. I really think I had that many toys as a kid. My younger brother had like a Punisher action figure, but like I don't even think he really knew who he was, but he somehow had it.
What makes me sad now about toys is, and my friend John Caulfield, hi John, has a great job. He makes some money. And John, a couple years ago, purchased the Unicron special build from Hasbro Pulse. And I think it was close to $1,700 or $1,800. So it was a pretty serious chunk of dough to get this toy. And admittedly, I was at his house earlier this year. I saw it in person. It's ridiculous. It is one of the most amazing toys I've ever seen. And it really kind of goes beyond toys. I mean, it's a piece of art. But what made me sad about it was this, is that it seemed to me now that the toy companies are now chasing people like me and John to buy like expensive toys, because I'm looking at my Akira bike from Bandai and my 1/6 Akira action figures that I won't take out of their boxes, which were ridiculously expensive. What they're not getting is my kids. Like my kids have no interest in toys. So like when I was my younger son's age, I would have been begging to go to Kmart. Oh, I want to go to the toy. I want to go to the toy. And my kids haven't played with toys in years, and they're 9 and 12. And even when they did, the whole idea of like, I like Star Wars, I want the action figures, I love Mask, can I get the, the cars or whatever? This generation no longer seems to care about that, and it makes me sad. And it does make me sad for the future of a lot of toy companies, because there's chasing the middle-aged man dollar for nostalgia, for like, we'll sell my buddy a $2,000 Unicron. They're not selling 200 kids a $10, 5-inch figure, or like a Transformers basic car. It does make me sad, because I almost feel like this stuff's going to kind of just age out with us. So it kind of makes me a little sad, to be blunt.
Yeah, that actually brings me to my next question. How
Yes.
what's the difference? What's the differences between like toys made in the '80s versus today? Like the marketing behind them, and
I
you
mean,
you kind of hit it. So.
the toys today are ridiculous. I mean, there's toys that are just through the roof.
Yeah,
Uh, high detailed sculpts, multiple color painting, multi joint, high end. Like I saw Masters of the Universe has a new Trap Jaw figure in some premium line they're doing, and I think it was like $600 or $700, and it frankly was amazing. You know, multiple heads, multiple hands. You know, it's not for kids. It's for collectors, and it looks amazing, right? But the problem is it's not for children and it's not really affordable.
yeah,
So they may be making more profit than they did before, but sadly, I really think that it's just kind of like slowly going through its final phases because I'm like, but we need, if we want toys, right? You need children to care about them. And to be honest, having children, they don't care. And it actually makes me sad because it isn't that I've told them not to like them. It's just what they are into and what their peers are into. They seemingly don't play with them. So toys are weirdly becoming a middle-aged man thing for like, you know, these kind of things. And I'm sure I'm being targeted by social media because I catch all the ads for G.I. Joe. They had, remember in season 2 of the G.I. Joe cartoon, there was a gigantic cobra flying saucer. They just made that. It was like $1,000, and it had, you know, it was ridiculous. I mean, the thing was like 3.5 feet wide, and I was catching ads for this thing, and I'm like, this is absolutely bananas. If I was a kid, I would have lost my mind because you would have never considered them doing that. There's a current, it must be a Hasbro Pulse thing where they're doing a high-end Rattler, like the A10 Warthog Cobra plane, and it is absolutely amazing. And there's some just single one-off GI Joe things that I've seen recently. There's some amazing Transformer toys. I mean, the you know, but like I said, what they're not making is toys kids are into. And you know, the one thing that I still see at stores is I do see a lot of Star Wars toys still on this rack if I'm at Target or Walmart. But seemingly even a lot of that is just like, hey, it's Darth Vader. Like the new characters, I don't know they have any stroke. So it's still like, hey, look, it's Chewbacca and Darth Vader, which was a big deal when I was a child. And I think that's kind of slowly even dying off. And that was such a huge toy thing. So I do think that the quality and the higher end collector stuff is through the roof, but we're not attracting children. And that's
yeah,
what we need. And it'll eventually kill this stuff because if they don't attract children, I think you're not making new middle aged men that want to pay big bucks for a toy. So to me, it's exciting, but then it makes me kind of sad because I understand the business element of it. And I'm like, if we're not minting out new children that are into this and also new properties. Like that's one of the other crazy things with the 80s. It was like new stuff all the time. And it was so much stuff like, you know, Mask, Mobile Army Strike Command, Sectars, Warrior of Symbion. There were so many toys, Turtles, right? That was a little bit past my time, but there were so many toys and properties, and there was a lot of new stuff for children. And, you know, I would ask you this, in the last 15 years, has there been one new toy that captured everyone's imagination? Like,
no.
I can't, I mean, the only one I can think of because my kids hate it is Skibbity Toilet, and that's just a weird, gross toilet.
What
Yeah, Google Skibbity Toilet,
is
right?
that? Where that word "skibbity" comes from? Like on TikTok and stuff?
I think so. Skibbity
Oh,
Toilet,
wow,
dude.
I
It's
didn't even
it's
know what that
it's
was
really
until
annoying.
yeah,
But, you know, I think, I mean, I'm just rattling off toy titles. And then there's stuff that I see. Like, I have a couple friends on Instagram, and we'll share toy ads because we'll see toy ads on these retro accounts. And it's like, did you ever see this toy? Like Black Star, which was kind of like a forerunner to He-Man. They had a whole line of toys for that. There were so many toys geared towards, you know, young boys, right? Like action, like GoBots, whatever. And like I said, it's kind of sad now because it's like I'm saying kids aren't into toys, and it's like, where are there's no new toys because even what is being made is like, hey, here's a really amped up GI Joe for 40-year-olds, right? And it's kind of sad because it's like, where is the new stuff for kids for toys? And it's like they're not into it,
Mhm.
and it doesn't exist. I remember another one that I was into, Dungeons and Dragons. LJN had a toy line that went out before the cartoon show on NBC, and I probably had 12 or 13 figures and monsters from that series. So I mean,
Hmm.
that was kind of like Warduke was one of the big, like, oh my god, Warduke and Kellic, and there was like a troll assassin. Like, I love those things. So I was a toy kid, man. I loved all that stuff, and if I would have been left to my own devices, I would have brought every single toy back then, because honest to goodness, there was so much creativity for kids back then. And I know they were all trying to make a buck, but it made me happy then. And to be honest, it still makes me happy now. I'm like, I've sold most of my toys over the years. At some point, space, whatever, lack of interest. But I do appreciate some of the toy collecting pages that I follow on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. There's a guy on Twitter, and he's on Facebook now too, and I can't think of his name, but all he does is post up old toy catalog pages. And I remember as a kid getting those catalogs from like Sears or Hills or whatever. I would freak out to flip to those toy pages. And when I would see a catalog, I would go crazy. And I would like just lovingly look at those pages. So I think he's Battle Armor Dad. And so when he posts up pages in these catalogs, they still kind of hit me right here where I'm like, oh shit, AC Penny's Toys 1984. Like what was for sale? And they were beautifully shot. So like if you saw like the GI Joe toys, they would have like little dioramas with like, here's a
Yeah.
little, here's the jets hanging from strings. So there was really a lot of artisanship in that for kids, that I got excited for like printed catalogs. I mean, and again, it's kind of hard to even translate that to kids today. They might be like, that doesn't even make sense to me. But that hit hard, man, when you were like 9 in the 80s, where it was like, oh my god, like it's the new Transformer toys, and they have like a little photo shoot for them in a catalog. So
Yeah. Like I used to like when there was like Toys R Us catalogs or
sure.
whatever around Christmas time, and just look
That's
through that.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but now Toys R Us doesn't really exist unless if it's like inside of a Macy's or something. But
Sure.
yeah, so yeah, I get where you're coming from. Do you have like any specific toy that you still have from the 80s? Like, do you have it still like with you to this day?
So to be honest, over the years, just for space and like, hey, I'll just cash in on this stuff. Like, I think all my 80s toys they're just gone. They sold off, and
Yeah.
they're just gone. I mean, just again, like through life, it's like, why didn't you save all that stuff? And it's like, I don't know, man, like at a certain point, it's just like storage, whatever. And you could say, well, man, you could have had more money. And like I sold a lot of that stuff as I moved over the years. Like, hey, I need furniture. So it's like you'll sell toys to get stuff you need. So yeah, I mean, over the years, I think almost all of my kid toys are gone. I don't know. And then maybe if I could go back and say, don't sell it, I'd have like crates and crates and crates of stuff that my kids wouldn't care about, and then they'd probably just want to sell it too. I've kind of replaced it with newer toys, like kind of like, so I have some Mad Max cars that I bought from a toy modeling company. I have my Akira toys. I have some They Live action figures. I have some Alien action figures. But man, you might make me cry on this show saying like, you had those old school Star Wars and everything else, but just again, like over time, like how much stuff can you keep? Maybe I should have saved them, but I know when I bought my house years ago, I did sell a lot of that stuff just for space and to have money to, hey, I got to get a TV and I got to get furniture. And you're like, cool, I made a couple $1,000, should I have saved it? Maybe, but such is life, man.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't really keep that much of anything ever. I usually get rid of.
Yeah, and again, sometimes I wish I would have kept some of that stuff, but it is what it is, man. I mean, like you go through life, sometimes you need money, and you're like, hey, like I need a dining room set.
Yeah.
So
this brings us to your Kickstarter.
Any more toy questions?
No, actually. That's really it. But how does toys relate to your campaign, Lords of the Cosmos?
So to me, every project has a DNA, like where did it come from? And for me, Lords of the Cosmos comes from my deep love of toys and cartoons, which in the 80s were kind of one and the same. They were really kind of one experience for my generation. So the DNA in this book is that what if the Lords of the Cosmos were an actual toy series and we're just experiencing them because they were really popular in the 80s. So every issue on the back cover has a toy that we have custom sculpt by my buddy Eric Adi out near Philadelphia. And so there's always that kind of tie-in. And then the inside back cover is like the back of a blister pack from the 80s where it's like, here's the character statistics and their origin story, which again, if you're a certain age, you put a lot of time into like, is Destro stronger or smarter? And so there's a strong nod that these characters were all toys from a line of toys and that you're reading their adventures. Was there a cartoon series and some other stuff? We did a letters page in issue 4 where the fans were encouraged to write letters. And it was a scream because pretty much all their letters were about the cartoon and the live action movie and et cetera, et cetera. Like the fans kind of got in on the fun and kind of the we get what this is supposed to be. So yeah, there's a lot of that DNA that you can look at these things and say, yeah, these really feel like they would have fit in on an episode of a cartoon from the 80s. That they would have been, guest stars on an episode of She-Ra, Princess of Power, or something of that nature. So that's kind of the DNA of like what these toys and cartoons has to do with Lords of the Cosmos. From even the title to the font to the character designs to just really everything about this just oozes that feeling. At the same time, I think we did a good job on not making it derivative where it's like this is an exact blow by blow of Masters of the Universe or Thundercats, etc. I feel that Lords of the Cosmos is unique enough that like you can get the feeling, but you're just not like this is exactly the same. There's nothing here that's different. This is too derivative. Because I love nostalgia, but I think one thing that a lot of nostalgia-driven entertainment now is just too much member berries where it's like, remember this? And then it's the exact same thing. These soft reboots that are basically retellings of films we've already seen that basically are just hoping we say, I remember that. I don't like that. And I do think you can lean into nostalgia if it's done correctly, but that requires work. And I hope we did a good job of giving people the feeling, but made it fresh enough that it's entertaining on its own without the feels. The feels can be a bonus, but we're not relying on that to hold the whole thing up.
That's cool. Yeah, this is a really cool idea. I've seen your campaigns before. I just didn't realize that it was based off of that. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, now you know, man. Now Greg's in the know.
Yeah, I am. That's awesome. Would you ever sell like a full like toy lineup one day, like of your Lords of the Cosmos?
Every issue we have a toy, and on this issue, Eric is going to do a limited amount of custom builds for backers, so you can get Zemba as a 11-inch figure.
That's cool.
So, and there's some behind the scenes later as you keep scrolling down that show you how he built her, and we did a photo shoot for it and everything else. Would I be in approval of a toy series? Hell yeah, dude. I think it'd be great. I guess the only problem is who would buy it, right? There's no kids who are into this stuff. So I'd have to hope middle-aged men would scarf them up, right? And maybe they would, but I think it'd be awesome. I mean, they were designed as a series of toys, so like they look and feel like they would be toys. The heroes have a logo. The villains have a logo inspired by the Transformers, where it's like all the cars and planes had the logo. I always liked that as a kid. So the Lords of the Cosmos and their enemies, the Disciples of Umex, each have a logo. So their logos are always on them, right? Because they've got a team, so they got to wear their badge, which is another kind of subconscious nod to like those toys, because especially with Transformers, they were big on those logos. So I think that, again, that's another nod where it's like all these characters have these logos, well, yeah, because they got a team and you got to know who's on what team. So yeah, I'd love to have Lords of the Cosmos toy line. If the Four Horsemen did it, it'd be even better. And I'm sure they'd make these characters even cooler than we've made them. But that's just my opinion. I have a lot of love for those guys.
Wow. I try to get a, something kind of like your Zemba toy that's right here made for our horror anthology like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But it was like more of a mold kind of thing. And then that person just like ghosted me on Instagram. So that was fun.
So these are just custom builds. Like she's a one of one. He's going to make a few more like on demand. I think we sold 2 of them in the campaign. She stands 11 inches tall. She's built on a Barbie build. What you're talking about is like tool and die molding. And that's a whole nother, that's mass production. You could be into that for tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. It was like the prototype was like $75, and then like each one after is like $50 or $25 or something. but he like just never answered me, and I was like, oh, all right. So now I'm trying to still get it made because I feel bad that like 3 people got it, but they never got it because he just disappeared. So yeah.
So it's definitely, it would be awesome. I would love to see Lords of the Cosmos as a cartoon. I would love to see it as an anime miniseries, right? But, again, who knows if it'll ever happen, but I would always entertain it. So if you're making animated shows, call me, right?
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite reward tier? Probably the toy.
I think the toy is the coolest, most outside the box tier, but I think the coolest tier is all the books because I just redid the covers for all the old books. So they match up with the new book. So they're kind of more 80s because the old covers were kind of more role-playing game style artwork. And the writers were like, maybe you could make these covers more 80s. So I redid the characters for all the old main covers. And then I asked my colorist, Danny, I said, could you make the colors on these things really bright? So we redid all the old issue covers. So they're all very like exciting and bright, like the 80s, where it's like it's bright yellow. It's, whatever. So I'm just excited. I'd say my favorite tier is get all the books, right? Get the whole story so far and get it in bright 80s. Look at this. It's 80s, right? So that I think to me, I'd say that. But a close 2 is get the toy. Spend some bucks.
Where can people find you?
So my website is just jasonlenox.com, Lenox. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Lenox Artist, which is right there, right? And then I have a Facebook art page, which is facebook.com/Jason Lenox Illustrator. But probably the easiest place is just at Lenox Artist, just right there on Twitter and Instagram or X or whatever you want to call it now. I probably never stopped calling it Twitter. I don't know. X doesn't roll off the tongue. Are you on X?
Yeah, no, I'm on Y.
It sounds like you're on drugs. Are you on X? I am. Right. So I don't know. I don't know that's good marketing to change.
Yeah. He wanted to call it X, and that didn't work. So now he bought Twitter to call it that. Yeah. All right. Well,
look it up on Kickstarter, Lords of the Cosmos 5 on Kickstarter. It's on my Instagram. It's on my Twitter. It's on my website. It's easy to find.
Yeah.
If you're into this sort of stuff and you like talking toys and cartoons, you'll get the book and say, hey, this is for me. I like it.
Yeah. So go back it. The link is in the show notes on YouTube. If you are watching this now on Wednesday, yeah. So go back it. The link will be shared all over the place on our Facebook, my Facebook, Twitter, X,
Instagram, X,
Instagram. Well, there's not really a link on Instagram, but it'll be everywhere.
Put the link in there, then you got to copy and paste it because they only let you have one hyperlink. It's a very weird thing.
You can't have a link like in the description, even though I've told people multiple times you can't do that, and then I see it still happening. Like people do it. I was like, Instagram's been around a while, and no one's figured that out. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And that's it.
Greg, I appreciate you having me back, and get me on one of your big panels one of these days. I'd love to weigh in and have a big group discussion.
I am going to talk to you in a second about that. So yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.